the president has other levers and other kind of tools in his kit to proceed with using tariffs for for economic policy. I think this thing, I think it will proceed, maybe not as planned, but they will definitely proceed with their economic policy of correcting free and unfair trade and correcting some of the ills in the trade system that the tariffs were meant to correct.
So the Supreme Court took the tariffs away, and then Donald Trump put them back again. It was a day of as much drama as you could ever get from a legal ruling on import taxes. In short, the judges ruled that the president's tariffs by decree were unlawful, and to get his own back, he imposed a new global 10% levy by another mechanism. You get the sense of much division and turmoil in Washington, the trade world, and indeed the Republican Party itself. Greg Swenson is chair of Republicans overseas. He joins us now from Chicago, where he happens to be at the moment. What do you make of the Supreme Court decision and Trump's pretty vitriolic reaction to it yesterday?
Yeah, I guess to answer the first question, it's not that much of a surprise. I think even the administration was anticipating that the ruling could go this way, because there was there's some doubts or questions about whether the IEPA, or IEPA, the Emergency Powers Act, was relevant in making these decisions on tariffs and trade. So, I think they were prepared for it. You've got, some backup plans, the 122, the Section 301. There's a long list of other laws that will allow the president or the administration to use tariffs accordingly. And so, and then as far as the press conference, that wasn't a shock either. I mean, the president, he takes things personally. He sort of punches back. I think by the end of the press conference, he had settled down and was even kind of joking around a little bit. So that's not a big surprise either. So I think this is a bit of a speed bump in the process, but I think, the president's, he'll keep at this, and I think he'll get everything, organized. It might take a little bit of time, but I think everything will probably proceed as originally planned.
So is this really about tariffs? Is this about sort of, broad economic policy? Or is this just a battle of wills and actually a test of whether the institutions of the US can actually put Donald Trump back in his box, or at least sort of remind him that you have at the heart of the American Constitution the concept of a balance of powers, which he doesn't seem to respect?
Well, no, he does respect it, actually. I mean, so I would disagree with the question. I mean, the president pushes the envelope just like every president does. I mean, President Biden did the same thing many times and was pushed back by the Supreme Court. He actually denied following the Supreme Court orders, for example, on the student loan relief, where he basically canceled student loan obligations and transferred those obligations to the taxpayer. And the Supreme Court said no. And then, of course, President Biden said, I'm not going to follow the Supreme Court's decision. President Trump is actually quite different. He is saying, whatever the Supreme Court says, I'll abide by it. I might not be happy about it, but that works. So I think what he's done is, pushes the envelope. And then if one of the institutions, in this case, the court, pushes back on his, what he's doing, he's fine with that, right? He'll find another way, or, but he's surely not, he's surely not disobeying the Supreme Court. So I think this is another example of the institutions actually working, and specifically with the Supreme Court, it also shows that, this court is not a straight 6-3 always ruling because the conservatives have the advantage. They actually, there's often cases where they don't rule, along party lines. And so I think this is a good moment for the Supreme Court and for the institutions.
And that, I can see that it shows that even those who are appointed by Donald Trump are proving themselves to be independent on this case. But where are we left in terms of trade policy? Isn't the worst of all worlds that one on the one side now, you're going to have a massive litigation, lawyers, pocketing vast amounts of money, fighting for compensation for tariffs that have been deemed illegal, and huge battles about who actually paid those tariffs and who should get the compensation, all that, a real mess. And then on the other, you've got fresh tariffs being imposed that create enormous uncertainty in, the global trade.
Yeah, I think uncertainty is what the markets don't like. And funny enough, the markets rallied yesterday on the news, which kind of surprised me because I think there's probably more uncertainty now than there was, a day ago. And so I think, there's some merit to that. But I think in this case, there's a handful of companies that were involved in this particular suit. But it's a small number. I think it's 4 or 5 companies. So perhaps they will be they will end up getting some sort of, reversal and in, I guess, for lack of a better word, a refund on the tariffs that they paid. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of refunds paid here. I think it will take, because of the complexity of it, the Supreme Court did not address what to actually do now. And Brett Kavanaugh in his dissent, actually made a point of that. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of money changing hands. It will, if there is any money changing hands, it will take a long time. But I think, because the president has other levers and other kind of tools in his kit to proceed with using tariffs for economic policy, I think this thing, I think it will proceed, maybe not as planned, but they will definitely proceed with their, economic policy of correcting free and unfair trade and correcting some of the ills in the trade system that the tariffs were meant to correct. And so I think that will go on. There'll be, again, he's got other levers to pull, and I think he definitely will.
Greg Swenson, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you in particular, because I can see from the scene behind you that it's dark in Chicago. It's obviously the early hours, so we really appreciate you joining us to share your thoughts.
My pleasure.